What's good, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of the PJ Hoop Podcast. I'm your host, PJ, and on today's episode, we'll be covering the Central Division. So that consists of the Milwaukee Bucks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Indiana Pacers, the Detroit Pistons, and the Chicago Bulls. Now, before I dive in on today's episode and talking about those teams, I kind of just want to give you guys a preview of what I'm going to be talking about next episode. So next episode, we'll be closing out talking about the Eastern Conference with the Atlantic Division. So that consists of the Boston Celtics, the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Toronto Raptors. So I'll be covering those 5 teams next episode. And then after that, we'll be moving on to the Western Conference. So back to today. If you didn't watch my last episode, I kind of just want to give you an overview of what exactly I'm going to be talking about those 5 teams in this episode and even my last episode. So I go over 5 topics. The 5 topics that I go over is the contract situation of the team, the rookie expectations on the team, players to watch for, at least players that I'm going to be keeping my eyes out for during the season on that team. Also the team's floor/ceiling, but within the floor/ceiling, I'm being vague. Just to let you guys know, I'm being very vague. And I'm doing that because obviously later on when I record other episodes moving forward, like in the future, I'm obviously going to have an episode where I give my predictions. So I don't want to give away my predictions while I'm giving these season previews on these teams. So that's another topic. And the last topic is talking briefly about the team's draft capital. Okay, so those are the 5 things. And as I go down them, I will highlight them again just in case if you forget. So we're going to kick it off. We're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. So the Milwaukee Bucks last season finished offense and defensive rating. Offensive rating, they finished 6th in the NBA in offensive rating and 19th in defensive rating. Their contract situation, it's kind of interesting. Not really. A little bit. It's a little interesting. So they're over the first and second apron as a team. Chris Middleton, which obviously is, I think, their biggest free agent coming up. He only has 1 year left on his deal. He has a player option for the 25-26 season. So that's a player just to watch out for to see, if they're going to extend him, if they're going to trade him, what's going to happen with Chris Middleton. Or Middleton's probably going to ball. I thought he played very well in the playoffs for what hand he was dealt. Dame and Giannis were out, and I felt that Chris Middleton did his best. And he, mind you, is coming off an injury. So Chris Middleton is for sure somebody to pay attention to this upcoming year. It's contract year for him essentially. Also another player with 1 year left is Bobby Portis. He has a player option also for next season. Pat Connaughton also has 1 year left on his deal. He also has a player option for next year as well. Another player that's on a 1 year deal is DeLon Wright, Gary Trent, Taurean Prince, and then MarJon Beauchamp is extension eligible starting next summer. And then Dame and Giannis's extensions both kick in starting, I believe next year. I believe it's next year their extensions kick in. So then my rookie expectations, they drafted AJ Johnson. They drafted Tyler Smith. So Tyler Smith played in the G League. He played for the G League Ignite. I liked what I saw at him out of the G League. I don't expect him to play that much this first year. He might crack the rotation, but I don't really expect him to play too much this year. More so this year, I expect him just to kind of being mentored by Bobby Portis. Because again, I just said Bobby Portis has 1 year left on his deal plus a player option next year. I'm pretty sure Bobby Portis wants to get paid, So I don't know if he'll be back next season. We'll see. But even if he is or if he's not, I think Tyler Smith is somebody that's probably going to be getting groomed by Bobby Portis during this upcoming year. No diddy. And so then AJ Johnson, another kid, he played for the Australian League last year. He played okay in the league, but showed glimpses to me. I don't really expect him to play. I think that's just somebody that they drafted to kind of, get him in the system, develop his skills for a couple years before we really see him on the floor. So I don't really expect those players to play much this upcoming year. So the team's floor and ceiling, in my opinion, again, just so you guys know, I'm being vague. I'm not trying to give away my predictions in any way, shape, or form. But to me, the team's floor is a second-round competitive series. Obviously, this last year, had their injuries or whatnot. But then also their ceiling is winning the finals. I'm not going to go into it too much on why I picked those as my floor and ceiling, because later episodes I'll go deeper dive in that. But I picked those two. I'm pretty sure most of you guys would agree with me. Their floor is the second round, and their ceiling's winning the title. You have Dame, Giannis, Chris Middleton's a solid number 3. I don't need to go into deep dives about that. So my opinion about them is, I said this when they got Dame. I believe they had a 3-year window to make something happen. With Dame obviously aging, Giannis, his play style, I don't know how I don't know how well that's really gonna age. I don't think it's gonna age well in the NBA, but I do believe they got a 3-year window with these two players. Last year was what it was. They got 2 years left, in my opinion. I think they have this year and the next year. So we'll see what happens. And I could be wrong. Maybe the window's longer, but in my opinion, I think they have a 3-year window to make something happen. I personally believe that their team defense for sure is gonna come up. I believe the team defense is for sure going to come up this upcoming year. Doc Rivers has a proven head coach. He's not a great one. I don't believe Doc is great, but he's a very good head coach. And Doc, I do know one thing about Doc. Doc does get his teams to play defense. So I expect basically having a training camp with this new team. I think Doc will be able to get them defensively, playing it within his schemes. And also I expect a bounce back year for Damian Lillard. I'm not going to go into that man's personal life, but he was going through some things last year, Obviously transitioning to Milwaukee, but then also other things off the court that was going on in his life. I think Dame will have a bounce back year this year. So that's kind of my opinion on them. And so the next players to watch on the team, I think two young players, MarJon Beauchamp and Andre Jackson, are two players I'm interested to see if they get more playing time. Beauchamp is going into year 3, I believe, if I remember correctly. He's going into year 3, and then Jackson is going into year 2. I really like Jackson's length on the wing. Obviously, they picked up some wings in free agency, so I don't know if he's going to be able to play over those vets, but we'll see. Those are just players that I put down as players I'm going to be watching just to see if they can get more minutes and show strides in their games because they're young, so those fresh young legs going to have a lot more energy on the court, and you need that when you have a team that's aging like Milwaukee. Another player keep your eyes on, I haven't talked about him yet, is Brook Lopez. He'll be 37 by the end of the season. And so Brook being that old, we'll see what we get out of Brook. Last year, I didn't think he didn't play bad. He was pretty he's pretty reliable. I think he played like 75 games last year. But, you're getting older, more miles on his body. So that's something to keep your eye on to see how the season goes for Brook being older. And we'll see. Maybe they'll regress his minutes and play more Bobby Portis, and have Giannis and Bobby Portis switch off at the 5 more. Or maybe they will play Tyler Smith. Who knows? We'll see. I'm going to go over their draft capital with you guys. Oh, and also, the new role players. I kind of talked about it. DeLon Wright, Taurean Prince, Gary Trent. Those are also players I'm going to keep my eyes on and seeing what impact they can have on this team. Because, again, I think defensively they will be slightly better for sure. In offense, Dame and Giannis going to have another year together with Middleton. I'm not worried about their offense. Bobby Portis, I'm not worried about their offense. It's defensively, can they get stops on the perimeter? And I think adding those 3 players will somewhat help in that area. So now we'll talk about their draft capital. Draft capital 25, 1 through 4 goes to New Orleans. Otherwise, 5 through 30 goes to the Nets. 2026, New Orleans. The Pelicans has the swap rights in 26. 27, they get the more favorable of Milwaukee and New Orleans goes to New Orleans, and then the other goes to Atlanta if it's 5 through 30. So that's in 27. 28, they either get their own or Portland owns swap rights in 28. 29, they get the most and least favorable of Milwaukee, Boston, and Portland. So I'm sorry, most favorable and least favorable of those 3 goes to Portland, because the middle one, if I remember correctly, goes to Washington in that scenario. 2030, Portland also again has swap rights, and then 31 they own their first, so they don't really got much flexibility. Next team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Offensive rating was 18th in the NBA. Defense finished 6th. They are under the first and second apron. And so contract situations for them with players. Karis LeVert has 1 year left on his deal. Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley's extensions kick in next season. Not this year, next season, 2025, 2026. Ty Jerome, 1 year left on his deal. Sam Morrell, 1 year left on his deal. Next summer, Imani Bates is a restricted free agent, so he's extension eligible then. Dean Wade has 1 year left on his deal. So he signed next year, but next year's contract, it's non-guaranteed. So they could cut him this summer if they want. I think the odd man out is Jared Allen. Jared Allen has 2 years left on his deal. And since they extended Garland, extended Mitchell, extended Mobley, Jared Allen, I think, is the odd man out. And I feel comfortable saying Evan Mobley, not next to Jared Allen, is a lot better. Evan Mobley looks a lot more comfortable. It just looks more fluid with him, I guess, being the 5. He's pretty thin, but I guess Mobley being your 5 is probably better off. Or just getting a better stretch 5 next to him. Or he's going to have to step out to the 3. I know he's been practicing on that and even started taking more threes and shit. So we'll see what happens there. Rookie expectation. I really liked who they drafted. They drafted Jalen Tyson out of Cal. I really liked him. I think he has opportunity to crack the rotation this upcoming year. He has really good size. He's 6'7". He's good at shooting. I can really see him getting some minutes at that 3 spot for them because Cleveland needs, I feel like, a reliable 3 with size on the wing. They need size on their wing. And I think Jason Tyson is ready to play too. He's an older guy. I think he's like 22, 23. So I think he's ready to contribute right away. And I really liked what I seen out of him in the summer league. So that's my rookie expectations. The team floor, to me, is a first-round competitive series. I think their ceiling is the conference finals. Yeah, obviously, I'm being vague. Again, being vague. And obviously, I could say they can win the finals. I could say that because we all know injuries happen in the sport of basketball. So they could get to the finals, but I think realistically, conference finals is more realistic. Unless, like I said, something crazy happens where there's a bunch of injuries and they get to the finals. But I think conference finals, again, being vague, is where I would slat them at as their ceiling. My opinion, I think this might be the last year we see the Twin Towers, the Jared Allen, Evan Mobley combo. We've seen this for a couple years now, and it's been somewhat stagnant. Unless Mobley comes out this year and takes, let's say, 4 threes a game and hits hits like 37% of his threes, it's hard for me to envision Cleveland extending Allen and them riding with that 4-man, with that kind of big 4 tandem. It's hard for me to envision that. So I could see this being the last year and them either getting off Allen at the trade deadline this year if they really feel like they don't have opportunity to win, or getting off of him next summer. So that's something to keep your eyes on. And who knows, maybe they'll trade him and try to get like Miles Turner or something, because I know I believe Miles Turner only got 1 year left on his deal, if I'm correct. And I think I'm going to cover the Pacers next anyway. So I think Miles Turner only got 1 year left on his deal. Players to watch. Craig Porter. I really liked him coming off the bench. I really like him as a backup a lot. Their offense under Kenny Atkinson, I think they're just going to be a better team. Under Kenny Atkinson, I expect them to be better. They weren't horrible last year by no means. Cleveland was a playoff, they were fine last year, but I think there's another gear that they can get to, and I think Atkinson's to me is a good coach. So I'm excited to see what he brings offensively to that team, and how is he going to utilize those 2 players? Again, is Mobley going to step out and start shooting threes a little bit more? He's not a really good shooter by no means. I mean, his free throw percentage, I don't have the numbers in front of me, mind you, but I think his free throw percentage is about 69% or so. He's not that good of a shooter. His jumper looks kind of funky, in my opinion, but they got to do something. Cleveland got to do something with those 2 tandems. And also health. Health is another thing I'm going to be keeping my eyes on, is the health of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley. They all only played about 50 to 55 games last year. So can they give us more minutes? Can they give us more games? Something to keep your eyes on. Draft capital for the Cleveland Cavaliers, 2025 goes to Utah. 2026, Utah has swap rights. 27 to Utah. 28, again, Utah has swap rights. 29, just straight up to Utah. 20, 30, and 31 are their own. And if you guys forgot or don't remember why Utah has so much, it's because of the Donovan Mitchell trade. Utah just gobbled them up. They just ate them up. You know what I'm saying? So that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. Next team, the Indiana Pacers, finished second in offensive rating, 24th in defensive rating. Their contract situation, they're close to the first apron, but still under the second apron. So they're close to the first apron, but still under it. And they're under the second apron. I have to clear that up. I kind of already said his name, Miles Turner. He has 1 year left on his deal. Ben Mathurin is extension eligible next summer. That's something to keep your eyes on. See if he, is trying to hoop, really hoop this year. I'm a big fan of Ben Mathurin. I've been a big fan of Ben Mathurin since he was at Arizona. Isaiah Jackson, restricted free agent next summer. That's somebody also to keep your eyes on. OG, James Johnson. He has 1 year left on his deal. He'll be on the, just going to be on the bench being a good vet. Rookie expectations. They drafted Johnny Fury. I think I pronounced his name right. Out of Kansas. I don't expect him really to get run on this team right now. Maybe in a couple years. He's a shooter. If people don't know who he is, he's a shooter. Taller. I think he's like 6. Johnny Fury, I think, is 6'6". I think Johnny Fury's like 6'6", 6'7". Maybe 6'8". But he's a shooter. Shooter out of Kansas. He's not playing this year. I'm just keep it frank. This team's floor and ceiling, in my opinion, is first round competitive series. Ceiling, getting back to the conference finals. And that's, again, I'm just being vague. I'm not, because I don't want you guys to, I just got to be vague until I give my predictions at a later date. My opinion, they're a fun team. I even said it last year last summer I did an audio podcast, and it was literally, I only did like 3-4 episodes on there. I didn't really care for it. But on my audio podcast, I literally said the Pacers was a team to watch out for. I even had Rick Carlisle as one of my Coach of the Year finalists. So, go ahead and check that out in the description, my old audio podcast. It's only on Spotify, by the way. So I'm sorry ahead of time, But, yeah, fun team to watch. And players to watch. Jarris Walker. I believe Jarris Walker, and so I'm a Duke fan. I'm a Duke Blue Devil fan. There's a backstory to that. I'll tell it at another episode. But I watched Jarris Walker. He went to Houston, and at Houston they played against Duke in the tournament. And I was watching him even before he even got to Houston because he was a highly rated kid in high school. But at Houston, I just love what I've seen out of Jarris Walker. I think he's better than Obi Toppin. I don't know why they extended Obi Toppin. I don't think that was a good idea. I think Jarris Walker's better than him. But we'll see if he can get more minutes in the rotation this year. I talked about him also last year in my audio podcast. Jarris Walker, to me, is better than Obi Toppin, and it's not even, in my opinion, it's not close. Yeah, Obi might be better offensively slightly, but defensively, Jarris Walker's doing laps around this dude, in my opinion. Another player to keep your eyes on, I kind of named him a little bit earlier, Ben Mathurin. Does he make a year 3 leap? It's going to be interesting because they're so Indiana. I feel confidently saying this. They're probably the deepest team at the 1/2 guard position. They're really deep there. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mathurin comes back in after we've seen what Nembhard did. After what Nembhard did just now in the summer league, but even in the playoffs, Nembhard was hooping. He was hooping in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to me to see how that dynamic works. Does Mathurin get the opportunity to make that year 3 leap? How does Nembhard make his year 3 leap? After showing in the playoffs, like, hey, I can start. It's going to be interesting to see if Indiana offloads some of those guys, and it's going to be interesting. I'm also going to be paying attention to Tyrese Halliburton. Does he come off and play off the ball a little bit more, knowing that you have Ben Mathurin, you have Nembhard, you got McConnell, you got Ben Shepherd? Do we see Tyrese Halliburton not have the ball so much in his hands? Don't get me wrong, the ball in Tyrese's hands, it's magic. But also, could this open up the offense more if he's off the ball? Because he's a really good shooter as well. That's something I'm going to be trying to pay attention to and see if that's the case. The draft capital. 2025, they own it. 2026, they own it if it's 1 through 4. 5 to 30 goes to Toronto in 26. 27, again, they own it 1 through 4. If it hasn't already been settled in 26 with Toronto, then in 27, same stipulations, 5 through 30 goes to Toronto. In 28 to 31, they own their own. So they got some flexibility there. They got some young players that they could offload. Indiana's a team to, I guess, keep your eyes on when it comes to trades because they have the assets. They got the young players. And like I said, they got a lot of guards. So I'm interested to see how they navigate that. Next team I want to talk about is the Chicago Bulls. Now, Chicago finished last season 19th in offensive rating, 21st in defensive rating. Their contract situation right now, they're under both the first and second apron. Free agents coming up, or contract situations coming up. Lonzo has 1 year left on his contract. Nikola Vucevic has 2 years left on his contract, but he has a very team-friendly contract, in my opinion. It's 2 years. He's at $20 million, which they can offload that easily. Josh Giddey's a restricted free agent next summer, so he's going to be, he's going to try to get himself a bag. And I expect they're probably going to extend him. They just traded for him. So Javon Carter has a player option next summer. Chris Duarte is a restricted free agent. Dalen Terry is extension eligible next summer. Doesn't necessarily have to extend him. And Torrey Craig got 1 year left on his deal. Rookie expectations. They drafted my guy Montes Buzelis, or if I like what I like to call him, I call him Prey Mantis. You know what I'm saying? Prey Montes. My expectations for him. To me, he's fearless. Buzelis. I've been high on Buzelis for a little bit over a year now. I like Buzelis' game a lot. I expect him to get about 20 to 25 minutes. Really, once they figure out what they're gonna do with, because Chicago's one of those teams that's kind of stuck in the middle. Like they got to offload. They got to do something with the Lonzo thing, with the Vucevic, with the Levine. They got to figure out what they're gonna do with that. So I think there's going to be opportunities for Buzelis to get that 20, 25 minutes and get some shots up. I know my guy, he kind of struggled with it. He's been struggling with his shot in the G League. And then even in the Summer League, he was struggling with his shot. But Buzelis is a good shooter. He's a good shooter. If I remember correctly, in high school, he shot, I think, 82, 83% at the free throw line, I think. Maybe a little bit higher. He's a good shooter, though. I mean, if you just watch his shooting mechanics, and I've watched, a lot of film on him, he's a good shooter, so don't be fooled by his shooting slump. But I'm going to be making sure, I'm going to be watching, how he adjusts to the NBA, speed and everything, but he's going to get his stroke down. I'm not worried about Buzelis. I just want to see him get the opportunities because Buzelis is 6'9", 6'10". He has that build. Like, he's built. Like, I'm not saying he's this player at all. I'm not saying it. But he has, like, that guard/forward moves like Kevin Durant. And he's kind of built like KD in a way. He's 6'10", super skinny dude. But he can move like a guard, He's built like a forward, like in size, like literal height. But physical physique, he's built like a guard, But yeah, so that's Montes Buzelis. That's what I expect out of him. I expect him to get some minutes and show his ability because he can score. He's very multi-dimensional when it comes to scoring the ball. He can do it at all three levels. Chicago, you got yourself one in Buzelis, in my opinion. Team's floor/ceiling. Floor is lottery bound. Their ceiling's a first round exit. Again, I'm just going to keep stating it. Team floor and ceiling, I'm being vague because I don't want to give away my predictions. And I'm going to do my predictions at a later time on a different episode. So that's why I'm being vague right now. My opinion, I kind of just said it. I've been saying it for 3 years now. They need to figure out, they need to blow up that dynamic. They got rid of DeRozan. DeRozan left. They should have traded him, honestly, a couple years ago. Like I would say 2 years ago, they should have got off of DeRozan. But they got to figure out what they're going to do with Levine. I think they can flip Vucevic because he has a beautiful contract. Lonzo's going to have an opportunity this year just to show what he used to be. Obviously, he's coming off of a very long injury recovery, But get off of Lonzo too, Chicago. Stop holding on to these players. Get off of all three of those players, man. You guys got off of Caruso. So I expect a fire sale. Truly, in Chicago, I expect a fire sale. And that's why I said Buzelis is going to get his minutes. It probably just may be towards January All-Star break-ish is when we'll see Buzelis really get his time with the Rock. Players to watch out for. Zach LaVine bounce back here. I still don't believe he wants to be in Chicago. I think he wants to get traded. I think he's going to do his best to improve his trade value. Obviously, I just said it. Another player, Lonzo, coming off his injuries. What is he going to look like? Because Lonzo was an ideal point guard. You know, he was coming in his own, shooting the ball. Defensively, Lonzo was locked down. He was a great defender, really great playmaker. It's just unfortunate what happened to Lonzo, man. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes on him. Josh Giddey, another player, new home, Chicago. He's going to get the keys. You know, him and Kobe White's going to be sharing that backcourt. It's interesting. I'm going to be interested to see how that dynamic works. And then I already said it. Last player is Buzelis. Montes Buzelis. I'm going to keep hammering it away. I love my guy Buzelis, man. I'm going to be rooting for Buzelis heavy. Because I really wanted, all full disclosure, I wanted another team to draft Buzelis, but they didn't take him, which is fine. But yeah, so the draft capital, I want to go over it. 1 through 10, they keep it. 11 through 30 goes to the Spurs. And then they also get Portland's pick if it's 15 through 30, which that hasn't conveyed yet. And it realistically, Portland's keeping that pick. Chicago, okay, let's be real. 26, 1 through 8, they keep it. 9 through 30, if it hasn't already been settled, goes to the Spurs. And then the whole Portland thing also, same thing. 15 through 30, they get Portland if it's not settled in 26. 27, literally the same stipulations I just said. 28, they get their own. And the Portland thing, if it hasn't been settled yet, the 15 through 30 and 28, if it hasn't been settled, they'll get their pick. And they get Portland's pick in 28. 29 through 31, they keep their own picks. The last team is the Detroit Pistons. Pistons finished 27th. They finished 27th in offensive rating, 26th in defensive rating. Their contract situation, they're under both aprons, under the first and second apron. And if you don't know what those aprons are, you got to look them up. Because I'm not going to go into details in this episode about the aprons. But yeah, so they're under both aprons. Players, contract situations there. Tim Hardaway is on a 1-year deal. Jaden Ivey is extension eligible next summer. Cade Cunningham's extension kicks in next year. Paul Reed is on a 2-year non-guaranteed contract. Jalen Duren is extension eligible next summer. Malik Beasley's on a 1-year deal. Rookie expectations. They drafted Ron Holland. I really like this pick for them. I believe instantly he should be able to come off the bench and give them really good minutes, really on the defensive end. Right now, they need that. They need defense. I thought they did a really good job at picking up Tobias Harris. I thought that was a really good pickup for this team. So that's my expectations for Ron Holland, is for him to come in and just come off the bench, give him, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of just pure defensive fearlessness and tenacity, literally. That's my expectation for him. And Ron Holland, I think, I talked about him in my pre-draft episode and my post-draft episode. So if you want to hear more about what I had to say about Ron Holland, go ahead and check out those episodes. The team floor to me is lottery. Their ceiling is the play-in with the opportunity to make it to the first round. And again, team's floor and ceiling, I'm being vague because I don't want to give away my predictions, which I will do my official predictions later down the line. So that's why I'm being vague. If you guys are wondering why I'm being vague on the team's floor and ceiling, that's why. My opinion, I think this team, they only won 14 games last year. I think this team is good enough to win at least 30 games, okay? You have year 4 Cade, year 3 Duren, year 3 Ivy. You got a new staff and a new head coach in JB Bickerstaff, and you got vets in Tobias Harris. Okay, this team should be good enough to win at least 30 to 35 games, respectfully. And if they can't do that, this franchise, I don't know. they got some real self-reflecting to do. Okay, but I do expect them to win between 30 and 37 games. I do expect that. And we can put that on the record. That's one prediction I will put on the record. Players to watch. Year 4 Cade. I liked what I seen out of Cade last year. And I expect another jump for him this year. I expect him, again, I think players like Tobias Harris is going to open up the lanes for a player like Cade, learning from a player like Tobias Harris, learning from Tim Hardaway. Again, JB Bickerstaff's a good coach. I expect Cade to make another leap even this year. Another player, Asar Thompson, his shooting improvement. Literally, it's that. It's just a shooting improvement. That's something to keep your eyes on. I remember a couple years back he changed his shooting form. Does he change it again? We'll see. That's something I'm gonna be keeping my eyes on personally. Also, Jalen Duren's overall defensive improvement. He's uber athletic, physically imposing. I believe he should be dominating more defensively. That's just my opinion, and I'll be keeping my eyes on it. And I think he will get better. He's in year 3, okay? So I expect that jump for him to come eventually. But yeah, that's something I'm keeping my eyes on is his defense this upcoming year. Draft capital for this team. 2025, 1 through 13, they keep it. 14 through 30 goes to the Knicks. Oh, no. Yeah, it goes to the Knicks. 26, 1 through 11, they keep it. If it hasn't already been settled, 12 through 30 goes to the Knicks if it hasn't already been settled. 27, 1 through 9, they keep it. Again, 10 through 30 to the Knicks if it hasn't already been settled. And then 28 to 31, they own their own picks. And I just want to take this moment to thank you for watching the PJ Hoop Podcast. And if you feel like I missed out on some things on anybody or anything that I missed on any of the teams that I covered in this episode, please be my guest and drop down in the comment section below if you feel like I could have talked more about somebody or someone else or something else about a team. Again, I'm not trying to go too crazy. These are just very short season previews of the team and what I'm going to be keeping my eyes on. But I'll see you next episode when I cover the Atlantic Division. Thank you for watching the PJ Hoop Podcast. PJ out.